National season is underway. UK Nationals is coming up. We have the German Nationals, was the French Nationals. If you're playing in the YCS this weekend or next weekend, this information will help you as well. Looks like we're not getting a ban list, so I wouldn't focus on that right now. What I'd be focusing on is preparing your deck list, getting ready for the event next week or the week coming up. UK Nationals is next weekend, and I won't be attending because I'll be competing in the Mastodon World Championships qualifier, which I'll be live streaming on Twitch for 72 hours. I've never done a 24-hour stream before, let alone a 72-hour stream, so we'll see how that one goes. In terms of your deck list for coming up Nationals, the thing that's going to make you stand out is your deck list. Now, you could play any type of deck. So the best decks right now is Purrrely, Super Heavy Samurai. You've got Kashtira, obviously. I mean, I probably would say those are the best picks for the event itself. Probably would stay away from Branded, even though the Explosion Lock is pretty broken. But to be frank, I probably wouldn't want to play that type of deck in this type of format right now. Purrrely's really strong, Super Heavy Samurai is really strong. Kashtira is obviously the best, but it's probably not the deck I would play personally, only because it has its own flaws. Obviously, all the decks have its own flaws, but this type of deck, it can brick and it can be quite frustrating, and you don't want to create variance during the tournament itself for you, especially during Nationals. I mean, topping Nationals isn't that difficult because you only need to go like X3 as long as your tie breaks are decent. But it's where I'm talking about is mainly in Top Cut. You create a lot of variance in Top Cut and you just don't want to brick. And if you brick one round in Top Cut, you're likely gonna get knocked out. And Kashtira can brick 1 in 6 rounds. And if it's top 64 knockout, you're gonna brick 1 in 6 rounds. So what I would do is I would probably play Super Heavy Samurai, which gives you good coverage against all the decks in the format. If you play that type of deck, it's a combo heavy deck. It can make some great boards. It's very good going first as well, especially post side deck, because you saw it in Spell Cancel and Sayuja Skull Dread. So a lot of decks struggle against that. Other thing is, if you do decide to take Kashtira, I would main Dimensional Shifter and Gamma in your main deck. You could probably go above and beyond and play Mourner. That's if you have space, but I definitely would play Gamma. I definitely play with Dimensional Shifter. If you play those type of cards in your Kashtira deck list, it'll give you a significant edge against the other decks in the format. Now, looking at Purrrely, like that deck is very strong. It's a very strong control deck. A lot of players are really unsure now what are they going to use as their discard engine, or are they not going to play a discard engine and focus more on hand traps? I do think if you're playing in any Nationals coming up, I would strongly play a heavy hand trap lineup. Now, that means if you are playing Purrrely, you will have to remove some of your discard engine. I probably would stay away from the Rainbow Bridge engine, and I would probably focus on maybe like the Shit Old Beast or Brow, the Darkswall card. But if you play Beast, it does start a chain link, which means you can chain block. You could play, if you wanted to, you could play 2 Beasts and like a Squamata, so you could then just send it if you need to. But then if you open multiple copies, it just gets a bit weird. So if you do play like in Pack's video, actually, he decided to play 1 Beast and 1 Brow. When he played those two, yes, there are downsides for playing Brow because it doesn't create a chain link like Beast does. However, if you open both of them, you'll be able to get 2 draws in that turn. But then again, a lot of people are playing Draw and Lockbird in this format. So pay attention for that. So now looking at Super Heavy Samurai, now what type of version would you play? I mean, I would try and make it as consistent as possible. I'd play a lot of the Super Heavy Samurai cards. What I'm going to do is I'll probably post like on the side or in the below, like some deck list examples. But ideally what I would do is I would, or actually in a future video, I could just do that. I can make another video with all the deck lists. But what I would do is in Super Heavy Samurai, is I'll just max out on the correct hand traps. Now, what are the correct hand traps in this format? Now, you've got a choice with Gamma. I do want to main Gamma in this type of deck. I probably would, just because it's such a strong card. One of the best hand traps that we've had in the game. Another hand trap that I would recommend playing is Kurikara. Now, this card is very good against the big 3 decks. It's good against Kashtira, it's good against Purrrely, and it's good against Super Heavy Samurai. Now, it's mainly good against Purrrely and Kashtira, so I would recommend playing it. It will give you good coverage against the best decks, and it'll be very, very strong in Top Cut. That's where it'll be the best. It'll perform the best in Top Cut. So if you don't own a set, get a set now. If you want to run deep in Top Cut, I would definitely own and play that card. That card has to be in your 55. So it has to be in your side deck or your main deck. The card is just too strong. Play it. It will serve you so well. The card's been neglected for so long. People didn't realize how good it is, and especially now, it's just so strong. The cool thing is, like during the end phase, you get to reborn your opponent's strongest monster, so it can be reborn like the Arise Heart. You could reborn a Baron. Baron will be very strong in that scenario. And against Purrrely, once you out the north, then yeah, I mean, you don't really care what you reborn. As long as you just clear that card, you're good to go. Also, I would probably look at playing Draw and Lockbird for sure in most deck lists. The thing is, as well, you want to play Ash Blossom. It gives you good coverage across the whole event. I do like Ghost Mourner though. The reason why I like Ghost Mourner is it hits a lot of the decks in the current format. It doesn't get hindered by Arise Heart being face up on the field like Effect Veiler would, because with Effect Veiler, it needs to get sent to the graveyard to be able to resolve. With Mourner, it doesn't care where it goes. All the Ghost Skulls except Ogre don't care where they go. Ogre's very good against the mirror match in Super Heavy Samurai. Expect that next week. The downfall of playing Super Heavy Samurai obviously is it doesn't play spells and traps, which means you can't truly benefit from Triple Tactics talents where a lot of other decks can. So if you aren't playing Super Heavy Samurai, try and fit Triple Tactics talents in your deck list. If you play it in your deck list, it'll give you a good edge for the event, especially in a hand trap format. Now, before I would have recommended always playing one in your deck list because it's never bad when you draw it. With it never being bad at all, it means you'll be able to not brick on playing multiples and you'll be able to resolve it by having one copy. The cool thing is about having one copy is it would just always be good. If you go first, you can look at the hand, or you can draw 2 cards. If you go second, you can draw 2 cards or take one of your opponent's monsters. Because usually when you go second, their cards in their hand aren't really significant unless you want to hit a hand trap. Well, this was before. This was like in like tier element type of format. Now, you want to play more talents. You want to play at least 2 copies, I would say, in your deck list. If your deck can play it, obviously Heavy Samurai can't. But if your deck list can play it, play at least 2 copies. The reason why is in a hand trap format, you'll be able to look at your opponent's hand, remove an additional hand trap once they've hand trapped you once, to be able to continue your play, and then remove a key card from their hand. Or if they haven't got any more hand traps, you get all the information and maybe remove a key card from the hand, which will prevent them from playing. And then you could set up like a mediocre board just to be able to combat the hand that they have. So that's where the skill comes in. A lot of players do tend to draw 2 cards with talents. Now, I would draw 2 cards with talents in this format if your hand is lacking hand traps or you have no way to play. When you draw 2 cards and draw multiple hand traps, that's probably better than looking at your opponent's hand. But if you're going to end on like a mediocre board, which usually can be pretty good once you have the information from your opponent by playing talents and looking at their hand, then look at their hand, take the key card, and play from there. So definitely play 2 talents in your deck list if you are playing like Purrrely, for example. Kashtira, I would recommend playing it in Kashtira. It makes it good for the mirror match as well. It just makes it good. It's just a strong card in this type of format. Kashtira does have a struggle of bricking, so if you partially play it and they interrupt you with a hand trap, you can just draw 2 cards and then hopefully you'll be able to continue from playing from there, or look at your opponent's hand, stop them from playing. But then again, usually in Kashtira, you just want to draw 2 cards. Now, the thing is, we haven't got a ban list yet. We just haven't got one. And a lot of players are eager right now, when is the ban list dropping? And usually we always get a ban list before UK Nationals, before German Nationals, before French Nationals, Italian Nationals, etc. For the big 4 Nationals. We haven't got one. It's very strange. Now, we could get one today, like an hour after me dropping this video, but I would be shocked if we got one. Maybe they're waiting for the results of Philly, because Philly got postponed by 2 weeks. Well, it got delayed by 2 weeks, and that's very unusual to happen for a YCS. It happens in very rare circumstances, and it happened just because it would have it makes it easier for the players who are attending and the judges, etc. So that makes sense. So maybe then they're waiting for the results from Philly to control the ban list, which then really confirms to us that Konami don't plan ahead that much with the ban list. To be honest, maybe they don't need to anymore, because their information they're getting is much more significant compared to before, because they are going off deck lists. They are using a lot of electronic now registration, which has deck lists, which they can just easily know how many copies of every card are being played. So they probably are making ban lists last minute, which makes the game, it makes it better for the game anyway. So I mean, if they made a ban list like a month ahead to get approved by Konami Japan, then the game would be, would be having like poor ban list decisions in the long run. So it makes sense. So with the YCS being postponed, it tells us that we probably aren't going to get a ban list, because they might be waiting for the results of that. Because of that, don't wait around. Don't slack around with your play testing. Don't slack around with your theory and your group deck building, testing, etc. If you know what type of deck you're playing, then test. Understand how that deck works. Build that deck to beat Nationals. how would you do that? Just beat it around the top decks. As long as you make the deck consistent enough, and as long as the engine is strong enough, then you'll be fine. The thing about Nationals, which a lot of players don't really understand, is you are allowed to lose in Swiss in this tournament. Don't be disheartened by losing around in Swiss, because if you are disheartened, what will happen is you will then just start tilting, make mistakes in future rounds, and it could cost you the tournament. Where, in fact, every round is difficult regardless in the long run. Like, as you progress during the tournament's going to get harder. It has to. As you keep winning, your opponent's going to get tougher. It's just how the game works, and it's how the tournament structure is designed. So keep in mind that if you go 4-0 and you lose round 5, fine. You lost to someone else who was 4-0 at the time. But it doesn't mean you're out of the tournament. It's not a regional. A regional is designed for you to go undefeated in Swiss if you want to win. And if you don't go undefeated in Swiss, the best you could get is probably top 8 or top 4. And in some rare cases, you don't have to go, there won't be an undefeated player in a regional where someone will win, but it's very rare that happens. So in a regional, you have to go undefeated to win a tournament, but at national championships, you don't. At YCS, you don't. You don't have to go undefeated in Swiss. You have to have the qualifying score to make top cut. So you are allowed to lose rounds. So keep that in mind when you do lose a round during Swiss, that it's not over. The amount of players who have won tournaments who have gone X2 or X3 in events is crazy. Keep that in mind before you tilt. The thing is, you want to make your deck strong enough for top cut. You want it to be consistent, but it doesn't have to be consistent enough as a regionals. If you're playing in a regional tournament, you obviously need it to be super consistent for that event. If you're playing in a YCS or in a national championships, you are allowed to lose rounds at Swiss. So you make it less consistent but more powerful. Why would you do that? It means your deck list is going to be more powerful top cut against the stronger players, but also against the best decks, because in top cut there aren't going to be many rogue decks at all, if not any. It's all going to be tier 1 decks: Purrrely, Heavy Samauri, and Kashtira, and the odd few branded. But at nationals, because the top cut is so wide in terms of top 64, and because nationals only has players from that country, it means that there will be a lot of decks that scraping that are rogue type of decks compared to a YCS, where, because at YCS top cut is like only top 32 usually, some are top 64, but because a YCS invites players from all over the world, it's usually just mainly tier 1 decks that always make top cut in a YCS, with the odd few exceptions of a few rogue decks, compared to a nationals where you'll have a strong 75% being tier 1 decks, 75%, and then the rest, like 25 to 30% being like rogue decks. We will see Dragon Link decks do well at nationals and they will top. With that in mind, those decks make some strong boards, which can be unbreakable. So a good card and a good choice of cards for nationals, I would say, would be cards like Lava Golem, Sphere Mode. It really will hurt Super Heavy Samurai players, Kashtira players if they go for the full zone lock board. Players will start to play around these cards if they know you're playing them, which means if they are playing Kashtira, they'll just go Rise, Heart, and pass. But a lot of players are playing Santa Claus and Kaijus as well, but mainly Santa Claus. So it's kind of like, well, what type of board do they make? So it's always scenario based, and you just have to make the decision best at the time. It's not always black and white in terms of what decision you make. Sometimes you just have to make it based on what you think your opponent is going to have at that time. So let's talk about Dark Ruler no more. Is that card good against Super Heavy Samurai? Yes, it's very strong. Especially when they're not playing spells and traps, you know it's always going to resolve, usually. However, because Spell Canceller is popular in their side deck with Sayuja Skuldread, Dark Ruler no more isn't going to be as effective compared to like a Lava Golem or a Sphere Mode. So it tells us then Dark Ruler no more will be very good in game 1 against that deck, because they shouldn't have Spell Canceller. So if you're going second against Super Heavy Samurai and you open Dark Ruler, then you're going to be good to go. You should win the game. However, what are the odds that you're going to be going second? You open Dark Ruler no more and you're against Super Heavy Samurai. It's quite slim. Do you want to create that type of odds for yourself? Probably not. Another thing is, because Nats invite a lot of players into one event from locals and regionals, you're going to get rogue decks during Swiss, not as many in Top Cut, but there will be some there, like I mentioned earlier in the video. You are going to see trap decks. You are going to see Labyrinth. You are going to see Skill Drain. So just make sure you have some spots in your side deck for back row removal. In a YCS, I would have less removal cards compared to a national championships. This is from my experience from playing multiple nationals. So just play more back row removal cards compared to a YCS. Floodgates will be a problem for you, depending on the type of deck that you're playing, but you know what type of floodgates hurt you with the deck that you're playing anyway. So that's why you're going to need to keep a few spots in your side deck for those. And maybe you might want to main the odd 1 or 2 cards for removal. Evenly Matched did see a lot of play before the new set came out, because not many decks were making or ending on a negation. Now all these decks are making some very strong boards with negations, or they're not committing as many cards because most of the cards in their hand are hand traps, which means Evenly Matched doesn't get as much value as it did before. So keep that in mind before you decide you want to main it or side it. But yeah, this is basically just a quick video just to let you guys know my thoughts about Nationals coming up. Good luck to everyone who was playing. If you like this type of content, let me know below. If there's anything that you feel like I've missed, let me know below. Also, a cool thing, Nat's going to be 45 minutes in terms of Swiss and Top Cut. So you get 45 minutes, even though it's an extra 5 minutes and it doesn't feel that it's much longer. It's really not, but it's much better than 40 minutes. You will feel pressure. You will want to do well. That's just normal. But just remember, it's the same game as it is as locals. It's just some of the players are tougher. The thing is, if you do decide to feel pressure, then it's because of the surrounding area and environment that you're in. You're in a national environment. You're out of your comfort zone. When you go to locals, you go there every week. You turn up. You're comfortable. You know the players. You know the environment. You're the store owner, etc. You're comfortable there. You're not out of your comfort zone, so you feel like you can play. Just imagine if you had that mentality going to Nats, being comfortable in that environment. You'll do way better. A regionals is all the locals merged together to create a regionals, and a nationals is all the regionals combined together to create a nationals. So if you think about it like that, it's not going to be that difficult in the long run.